Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of House of Loki Presents. Firstly, everyone here at House of Loki wants to wish you the most marvellous and wonderful 2023. Happy New Year from all of us. This episode includes gorgeous readings from our second quarterly anthology, Magic, Mischief and Mayhem. Those three words are our motto at House of Loki. Everything we do has elements of those three things. But it's also the name of this gorgeous book. Now take a look at that cover there. The artwork is by the brilliant Greenspike, whose website will appear below me right now. And every page of the book is just stunning and fun and magical. But first, let's change the scenery a little bit and get right in the mood for some magical fantasy stories. First up is our good friend Gary Rubidge with an excerpt from his story, Billy the Creature. I absolutely love this story. Billy appears from nowhere and has to find out who he is and why he exists. It's just magical and funny and cheeky. You'll love it. So here's Gary with a small excerpt for you.
Hello, my name's Gary Rubidge, and I have a story called Billy the Creature, which is in the current House of Loki book, Magic, Mischief and Mayhem. My story is about a creature called Billy who has just been called into existence. He doesn't know how or why, and he is very lucky that there were two witches who saw him being called into existence. The two witches have come to help him as they are about to be chased by a crowd of people who had also seen Billy called into existence, so they needed to escape. So I'll pick up the story from that point. The kind lady wanted her blanket and was calling out to Billy to give it back, but he decided he needed it more than she did. I wish they wouldn't follow us, Kelly puffed between breaths as she ran across the road. Billy thought that was a good idea, and suddenly a big gust of wind blew the people over who were chasing them. By the time the wind died down and the people climbed back to their feet, Billy, Kelly and Shelley were out of sight. When they reached the back garden of the house, Shelley stopped running and began looking for any danger. Billy was still looking behind himself, and he ran into Kelly, who had stopped and was staring at a ring of toadstools in the far corner. "Look," Kelly pointed at the ring. "That can't be good. Do you think that was where the goblin went?" Shelley was convinced nobody had followed them. She glanced at the ring of toadstools and shivered. "Yes, I think that is exactly where it went." Then she turned to Billy, who was also staring at the ring. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" Shelley pointed back to where they had just been. "Make that wind knock those people over." Billy shrugged his shoulders. "When Kelly said she didn't want them to follow us, I thought it was a good idea, and it happened." The two girls knowingly nodded at each other, a worried look across their faces. The sort of look that parents give at each other when a child has done something wrong that the parents didn't believe the child would do. Billy was worried. Why? Was it bad? Shelley answered, "Because and probably." Kelly continued, "It's not normal for magical people to think something and for it to happen. They need to cast a spell, and you're not even a magical person. You're not supposed to be that strong with magic." Billy suddenly realized he was different to the girls. He had a big belly, webbed feet. His ears were pointed, and he had no hair. Billy slowly touched his mouth with his hands and felt fangs on either side. He stared at his hands and noticed that they looked like the girls' hands. "Also, real humans can't see magical creatures. They are blind to them," Shelley added. "So we need to get you to a witch or a wizard to discover why you are different." This scared Billy, and he wanted to run away. But Kelly seemed to understand. "It's okay. Don't go away. We won't hurt you. We want to help you." And I will leave you to read the book and find out what happens to Billy, Shelley and Kelly.
Thanks a lot for that marvellous reading, Gary. And you're all just itching to see what happens next. I'm dying to read it, and I've already read it. Next up, we have Lady Lindsay Holloway, what, and she's reading an excerpt from her story, The Librarian and the Lost Prince. She has a gorgeous main character called Margaret, who's a dragon. All dragons hoard things, but this dragon hoards something that's particularly special to us. She also tries a hand at poetry, but you can judge for yourself how good she is at that. Ooh. Here's Lady Lindsay Holloway with The Librarian and the Lost Prince.
Hello all, my name's Lady Lindsay Holloway, and this is my very first children's story that I've ever written. I tend to write horror stories or fantasy stories for adults, but I thought I'd dip into that magical little world that lives in the back of my brain to bring you something for children. My story, The Librarian and the Lost Prince, centres around a dragon by the name of Margaret. She's not your typical dragon. She does hoard things, as all dragons do, but unlike most, she prefers books over things like treasure or gold. So, let me introduce you to her. Thud! Margaret shot up in her bed, flailing as a duvet caught in her claws, leaving her wrestling with the goose-down octopus trying to drown her while some nameless horror stomped through her home. Finally, she banished the covers from herself, one hand pressed to her chest, her heart thundering so loudly that she was convinced the intruder would be able to hear it. She clamped her jaws together tightly, eyes closed, concentrating on slowing her breathing while her pulse pounded in her ears. Once calm, she swung her legs from the bed, her foot knocking against something hard on her rug. Margaret scowled at the dark object, blinking until her once exceptional eyes rid themselves of the drowsy fuzz that remained, only to remember she needed her glasses to see flipping anything these days. "Oh goody, I'm going senile," she sighed, retrieving her spectacles from her nightstand and placing them upon her nose. That's better. Ah! It was Hephaestia's almanac. Margaret had taken the colossal spellbook to bed with her. She must have fallen asleep with it and, rolling over, knocked the book onto the floor. So it was the book that had roused her, not some nightmarish beast with 1,000 tentacles looking to steal her soul. However, the duvet seemed willing to fill that nightmare for a moment. Chuckling at her paranoia, Margaret retrieved the book and dusted down the cover with a gentle hand. Clink, thud, hiss! Margaret hiccuped, a plume of smoke rising from each nostril, her eyes fixed on her bedroom's dark and gloomy entrance. Every wall of Margaret's cave home was lined with bookshelves, filled from top to bottom with her hoard, and atop the shelves, and stacked neatly upon the floor beside the shelves. In truth, Margaret was running out of room, but she had plans to extend deeper into the mountain to accommodate her treasures. The problem with having so many bookshelves, and no space for her books, was that she was seeing figures where she knew there weren't any. But what had made that noise? Margaret swallowed, wincing at the lump that formed in her throat. Then, with the almanac clutched to her chest, she grabbed the pot of cold troll tea on the side table, ready to use it as a weapon if she needed to. Margaret crept silently as she could, sticking to the rug she'd acquired to take away a little of the chill from the stone floors. She snaked her head around the entrance to her bedroom, peering down the corridor into the darkness. Curse her terrible eyesight! Years ago, she'd have seen everything as clear as day. Now, even with her spectacles, she couldn't see a flipping thing. "I know it's here! I know it is! The oracle said the book was here!" a voice hissed, each syllable bouncing off the walls. There was an intruder. Margaret scowled, her fear replaced with annoyance at the audacity. How dare someone come into her home and rifle through her things without her permission? Hephaestia stashed under her arm, wings furled against her back. Margaret pulled herself to her full height and puffed out her chest, slamming her huge tail against the floor with a dull thud that caused the entire cave to shudder. Several books fell from their places, and Margaret silently cursed, her pleasure at the fearful squeal further down the corridor replaced with more annoyance at having caused a mess. Fo, fee, fo, fi, fee, hum! I smell the sweat of a smelly human! Was that the best you could come up with? She sighed, rolling her eyes at herself. Come out, or I'll squash you like an orange. It's your last chance, you horrible... horrible... Smorange? Slorange? Oh, for goodness sake, Margaret! Centuries of reading poetry and you chose orange? Oi, little thief! Get out here or I will smash you for trespassing, she snapped, stepping into her study, hands on her hips as she scowled into the shadows, seeking the intruder. Something moved to her right, and Margaret screeched, launching the remnants of troll tea at the little human trying to sneak past her behind a stack of books. The ice-cold, pungent liquid slapped the unsuspecting boy straight in the face, and he stopped dead in his tracks. Margaret watched as the boy's eyes rolled back in his head as the troll tea filled his nostrils, and then he went stiff and fell backwards. Oh, flip! Margaret winced as he crashed into one of the stacks of books, scattering them across the floor. What a fine mess you've made, she muttered, partly to herself, partly to the unconscious boy. She put down the empty teapot on her desk and curled her tail around the almanac, so that she had both hands free to pick up the poor, wet human. She carried him into the kitchen, placing him in her rocking chair beside the hearth. She tucked a blanket around his shivering frame and relit the now smouldering logs until the fire danced and filled the kitchen with a soft orange glow. Not troll tea, I think. Honestly, I don't know how you humans go through life without it, she snorted as she filled the kettle and placed it over the fire. Margaret tapped a claw upon her kitchen counter and sighed. In all her centuries, Margaret never encountered anyone trying to sneak into her hoard. Plenty of knights attempted to make a name for themselves by taking her head, but none had even come close. And after a while, they just stopped trying. So what was this little weed looking for? It was a scrawny little thing. All gangly limbs, pale skin, with cuts and bruises barely hidden beneath the muck and mire of living on the streets. He was the most unlikely thief she'd ever seen, but she had to hand it to him. He'd been bold. He might have got what he'd wanted had he not knocked over the potion book, complete with sample potions for reference and example. Margaret leaned over the boy and poked him with a claw. What were you looking for, little one? She asked. His eyes shot open and he went white as a sheet, his reflection looking back at him in Margaret's glasses, which she could see in his eyes. Wah! He screamed. Wah! Margaret shrieked. Leave me alone, foul dragon! I'll carve out your heart, he cried. Foul? Charming! And good luck. Bigger men with sharper tongues have tried with bigger swords than your non-existent one. I could have eaten you if I'd wanted, but I haven't. So now, what are you doing in my house, and why are you searching through my things? She demanded. I'm looking for a book, and the oracle told me it would be here. Most likely. I have the most extensive collection of the written word there is. What book are you looking for, and why? A book on noble lineages, because I need to prove I am the legitimate heir to the throne, not my terrible uncle. Margaret's heart broke for the boy as he stared at his hands, twisting the blanket she'd covered him in with his hands. I take it he's not a good man. The boy shook his head. Not at all. He killed my father and married my mother while she was pregnant with me. I have her locket and my father's name, but without the book to show a record of my mother being pregnant, I cannot claim the throne. The oracle told me I could find the book here, but I must be quick, as my uncle has been searching your shelves. He has? Margaret squeaked. The boy nodded. How have I never noticed? My uncle is a powerful magician. He owns every spell book ever written except Hephaestus' Almanac of Formidable Conjury, Margaret interjected. How did you know? Because there is only one copy, because the book is so dangerous. And I've only just come into possession of it, she sighed. That would explain why he hadn't found it here yet, and why he's been so angry of late. Does he torment you? Margaret asked. No, the boy shook his head. He believes I'm dead, I think, but I returned to the city to try and reclaim my throne from him, which was when the oracle found me and started to help me. She had a vision that my uncle would find the almanac and cast a spell that would twist the world until it did his bidding. He'd be the most powerful man in existence. With the almanac, he'd be able to end the world entirely, which was why Hephaestus destroyed most of them before her death. It was in destroying these books that she died, drained her of all her magic to rid the world of even half the volumes made. The rest have killed or maimed many great magical beings over the century. Until this last volume, the one now in my possession. We have to destroy it before my uncle finds it. The boy jumped out from the rocking chair. Blanket discarded at his feet as he looked up at Margaret, leaning back as far as he could to meet her gaze. No! I don't destroy books. On the contrary, I love them and protect them. Words are precious, she protested. Even the dangerous ones. Especially the dangerous ones. I know it might not make sense, but they have a place in this world too, and they deserve to be loved without fear of being used. I'll help you with your uncle. I know every book in this collection, so I can find the one you need to prove your lineage, but we will also need a plan for your uncle. I'm Margaret, by the way. Jocelyn. Prince Jocelyn, I suppose, though only by blood at the minute, the boy said sheepishly. Well, little prince, we've got work to do. And if you want to find out what happens, you'll have to read the rest of the book.
Thanks, Lindsay. Aren't you already in love with Margaret? She is so adorable, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be lots more stories about her coming from Lady Lindsay Holloway. And hopefully she'll send them all to House of Loki. Next, we've got our fabulous friend Nick Wilkinson. Nick does a lot of the voice work on our trailers because he's just got the most amazing voice. This reading is a poem, but he also has a story in the book. And the poem sort of fits with the story. It fits within the same area of folklore and geographical area. It's very interesting. Both are very interesting. They work very well together. So here's Nick Wilkinson with The Loneliness Birds.
There's quite a fowl, quiet and foul, who waddles on this beach. Feathered plume, frown of gloom, completely void of speech. Orange flame cask, crimson mask, creature of the absurd, a flightless, fightless bird of prey, called the loneliness bird. There are countless scales, fins and tails, yet not one friend has he. Each salty tale of wow or whale, that's washed in from the sea, by ocean's flows and undertows and waves that cut and run, are the reason for believin' he is the only one. Yet there is a dance and some chance to wash away the blues. Hop 3 times, singing backward rhymes, then vomit up chartreuse. Brood and gawk, then a silent squawk, and conjure up some charm. Peck and preen, nothing too obscene, on Seco Island's farm. A big stone egg perched under leg gives time for hope to grow. He waits, you see, with faith there'll be someone he'd love to know. Rumbly, tumbly, egg starts quaking as you begin to wake. A freaky deaky, odd type sound, the shell begins to break. A new laid clutch, a softer touch, brings new life to the world. Yes, some stress, and a bigger mess than when the daft bird hurled. To sing under wing till a time they think that they are grown. Then off they will flee, and he will be again left all alone.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Can't wait to see what else we do together this year. Our friend Luke Emery wanted to be part of this video, but he's insanely busy because he's just got a new baby in the house. So I'm going to read a small excerpt from his story, Honest Gwen. It's a lovely story, but I also think we're going to hear more from Honest Gwen. She's born in a very difficult world, and she's had a very difficult life, but she's kind and sweet and honest, and that seems to work out for her, and she meets amazing friends along the way. We're joining this story where Gwen, who's starving hungry, has managed to get hold of a giant, scrumptious looking egg. Now she just has to cook it. So here it is, Honest Gwen by L.T. Emery. It was finally time to cook her egg. She didn't have the luxury of a pan to boil water in, so instead she took the egg and placed it as close as she could to the fire without burning herself. The green egg shell darkened next to the flames into a deep emerald colour that seemed to shine. It was really rather beautiful, she thought. The deep emerald colour slowly fanned out around the whole egg. She was conscious she didn't want to burn it on one side, so she grabbed a couple of sticks to grip and turn it. As she leant forward, the egg twitched, just a tiny bit. Worry coursed through her, and an image of the egg exploding sparked through her head. Quickly, she used the stick and pulled away from the flames, turning it in the process. Just another minute, she thought, and I'll take it away to cool. No sooner as she pulled the stick away did the egg twitch once more. Oh God, please don't let this explode. Gwen reached the sticks in another time and pulled the egg away from the fire. Then it started to shake from side to side before an audible pop and crack bloomed. Gwen gasped at the noise and fell backwards slightly. She raised a hand to cover her eyes from the molten egg that was definitely about to rain down on her. The crack ran down around the egg before it ceased moving. A second passed. No explosion. Oh, thank the gods, Gwen muttered. I'm not going hungry tonight. She leant back and sighed with relief. Then the crack did explode in a tiny ball of flame. Gwen let out a scream of surprise and jumped backwards. She shielded her eyes again. When she finally plucked up the courage to move her hands and look at the remains of her dinner, she was dealt possibly the biggest shock of her short life. Sitting just next to the fire was a dragon. An honest to God's dragon. It was the size of a rat. The green dragon spread its small leathery wings and yawned a little puff of smoke. Gwen chuckled, amazed and shocked at what she was seeing. It let out a small mew, as if calling for its mother. So of course Gwen nervously took a step towards the tiny beast, and it mewed once more. Hi there, little guy, Gwen whispered. Oh, don't be scared. She slowly crouched down next to the tiny dragon, noticing its scales glimmering in the firelight. They were as beautiful as emerald jewels on the necklace. The little thing finally opened its small eyes for the very first time, revealing two green pupils that looked as if they could be those of a human being. They were as green and as warm as she remembered her mother's to be. Gwen's heart melted, and she fell in love right there. She sat cross-legged, and the dragon crawled into her lap, curling into a ball of surprisingly smooth scales. It was like having a water skin full of hot water in her lap. She lowered a hand to stroke the dragon, and its head shot forward on the neck nearly as long as its body, and bit down on her finger. Gwen let out a startled cry of pain, and the dragon sunk back. She looked at the line of small beads of blood crossing her finger, and then the dragon rose back up, following the finger and the smell of blood. You're hungry, aren't you? She said. Oh, I know. She leant over the dragon. Its inquisitive little eyes followed her every move until she got hold of a coat that had been drying by the fire. She pulled it back and dug through the pockets until she found a package of meat on a stick. I forgot about this, she said. It's only raw, but you can have some. She waved the stick towards the dragon and it coughed out a stream of fire, coating the meat and cooking it instantly, also nearly singeing off Gwen's eyebrows in the process. She pulled back slightly but laughed as the small dragon reached out and ripped a piece of singed meat from the stick and gulped it down greedily. You're a hungry one, aren't you? I think I'll call you Iggy. The dragon turned and looked at Gwen, cocking his head to one side. You like that name, Iggy? The dragon cocked his head the other way. Gwen squealed in delight. I guess you do. Eat up, Iggy. I hope we hear much more from Gwen and Iggy in the future. I chose that piece of the story because it sums up Gwen's character very well. Whether she's hungry or tired or scared, she'll look for somebody who's more scared and more hungry and more tired, and she'll do everything that she can to help them. And now she's got Iggy on her side. Who knows what she'll get up to. And that, I'm afraid, is all of your story excerpts for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed them, and I hope you're itching to read lots more, which you can in Magic, Mischief and Mayhem.